Greatest fraud in U.S. history. Most people think they know what the Federal Reserve is, but do you really? What you're about to discover, only 0.3% of the world knows, and it will change your life forever. First, the Federal Reserve is not owned by your U.S. government. It's a privately owned bank, and it's about as federal as Disneyland, something Washington fat cats have been trying to hide for decades. When our U.S. government is dying for cash and they can't borrow from anyone else, they go to the Federal Reserve. Frightening fact number one, our government takes monstrous loans every time it prints money. Let's say the government wants $1 billion. The Fed prints them $1 billion in exchange for $1 billion in U.S. Treasury bonds. And these U.S. Treasury bonds, they have to be paid back with interest. Frightening fact number two, the Federal Reserve has been turning U.S. dollars into monopoly money for decades. Here's how. Let's say our U.S. government wants $10 billion more this time. The Fed prints $10 billion more and gives it to the U.S. government. But wait, where did the Fed get the $10 billion to loan out in the first place? Here's the catch. It didn't. It's based on the previous billion-dollar bonds that they got from our government. You see, the Federal Reserve makes its own rules, and based on hidden documents that I uncovered on corrupt banking practices, the Federal Reserve only needs 1/10 of whatever they lend out. That means the Federal Reserve has been printing fake money for decades. $10 billion, $100 billion, $500 billion, $1 trillion, and it's all as worthless as toilet paper, and it's been spread all around the world. But wait, it gets worse. Washington scammers would have you believe the U.S. debt is only $16 trillion, but according to Lawrence Kotlikoff, who is an economics professor and also served as the chief economist for President Reagan, if you include all of our off-the-record debts like Social Security and Medicare, the real U.S. debt totals $211 trillion. Now, just to put that in perspective for you, $1 million, if you have it in $100 bills, weighs about 22 pounds. You could carry that in a knapsack. $1 trillion weighs 11,000 tons. That's more than the weight of the Eiffel Tower, one of the tallest buildings in the world. Now, how much do you think $211 trillion weighs in $100 bills? 38 million tons, about the weight of 104 Empire State Buildings, all in flimsy paper. And if you paid this off $1 billion a day at a time, it would take you 578 years to pay off that debt. But wait, it gets worse, much worse. Our government's spending money like it's water. We're wasting an estimated $10.5 billion a day. That's $3.8 trillion a year. And half of all of that money that our government spends is pure debt. They borrow half of what they spend every single day. But how's your government paying for these $1 trillion of debt? By asking the Federal Reserve to print more money. More monopoly money with absolutely no value. Our government is drowning in debt and it keeps borrowing like a heroin addict to pay it off. It's like paying off your credit cards with more credit cards. Now what happens when you keep paying off your debt with more debt? Eventually the bubble has to burst, and we're headed for the greatest currency collapse in world history. It's called hyperinflation. It's what ultimately toppled the Roman Empire. You see, inflation is when a country is printing more money than it's actually making, also known as fake money. When you do this, the value of the dollar is crippled. It's why in the 1950s you could buy penny candies and get a candy bar for a nickel, but today that same nickel doesn't buy you squat. It's the real reason why prices rise every single day. And hyperinflation is when inflation reaches unstoppable levels. The value of the dollar nosedives and prices skyrocket overnight. Just like what happened in Budapest in 1945 to 1946, where their prices for their goods and services doubled every 15 hours. Or Zimbabwe from 2007 to 2008, where their prices doubled every 25 hours. Or Yugoslavia in 92 to 94, where their prices doubled every 34 hours. Weimar Germany from 1922 to 23, their prices doubled every 3 days and 17 hours. In Bulgaria from 1996 to 97, in December 1996, $1 was equal to 300 lev. 3 months later, $1 was trading for 3,000 Bulgarian lev. To paraphrase quotes by one survivor of the Bulgarian currency collapse, the price of everything changed daily. Sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. Millions of angry, hungry people protested all over the country. It was a nightmare, like something from a movie, and everyone was involved. It was complete chaos. There was no government, no money, no economy, no work, no goods, no food, no nothing. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to wake up tomorrow and hear on the news, the dollar is crashing and stocks are plummeting, and there's no